Let's get this sports podcast party started, all right?
The JAYREELZ podcast.
What is happening, Michael people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? Hope everybody's doing well, feeling fantastic, in excellent spirits. Ain't nobody on the road, ain't nobody on the beach. I feel it in the air, the summer's out of reach. Ah, yes. My favorite season of the year is just about to set its sun on the horizon, but that's okay because the latest podcast is about to rise, delivering everything that's happening in the world of sports, as this is the JAYREELZ podcast with Joe's JAYREELZ. For my first timers, welcome aboard. And for those who've been banging with me going back to the very beginning, somewhere in the middle, or even as early as this past Monday, I welcome you guys and gals back. And speaking of the sun setting on a season, the baseball season is now 11 days away from concluding. And I understand that people want to say, come on, JAYREELZ, talk NFL. We got week 3, we got a couple of big games that are on the docket, including a Monday night game, which could be a Super Bowl preview. Way too early to even get into that. But of course, you know there are going to be people out there that are going to talk about that, but not this guy, although I did bring it up. So yeah, I guess I'm guilty of that. Okay, fine. Hand raised high in the air if you're watching on Spotify or on the YouTube channel at JAYREELZ. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so. I would sincerely and gratefully appreciate it. But with the stuff that's happening on the gridiron, whether it is the pro or even the college circuit, or maybe a couple other things that may be happening and percolating throughout the sports landscape, I'm starting off with baseball because we have a couple of races that we've been keeping our eye on, and the sleepy September that I said 2.5 weeks ago on Labor Day Monday, well, maybe it's not so sleepy, that there is actually a bit of a roar that's taking place in baseball. And pretty much how you have to look at what we see here is the NL wildcard as well as the AL West. Because as of right this very moment, those are the two that I'm going to focus in on. I understand that you can look at what's happening in the NL West between the Dodgers and Padres. I think the Dodgers will still prevail when it's all said and done. And remember, the Dodgers have the tiebreaker over the Padres as far as the season series go, because if they do end up even after game 162, the Dodgers will win the NL West. So the Padres would have to surpass them in order to win the division, which I don't think is going to happen, despite them being 2 games back. And you also have to remember that the Dodgers and Padres do not play one another. Their season series is already kaput. So we have that division race. I'm not even going to include that. And even though the Yankees have gained a game on the Blue Jays, and remember the Yankees and Blue Jays don't play one another, and the Blue Jays do have the tiebreaker over the Yankees, so similar situation to the Dodgers and Padres. The only way that the Yankees can win a division is if they have a better record when it's all said and done. And could that happen? Quite possibly, because the Yankees, now they play to conclude their season Baltimore twice, in Baltimore this weekend, and then the final weekend of the season, and then they have the White Sox coming into town. And Toronto, I think their schedule is also pretty easy as well. Now, they'll conclude their series in Tampa, where they lost last night. That's where the Yankees gained the game after they wrapped up their series with the Twins and beating them 2 out of 3. But Toronto's final 9 games are as follows, or 10 games if you want to include today. At Kansas City, all right, Kansas City looks like a team that is pretty much going to be toast as far as the wild card goes. They host the Red Sox, who are trying to battle it out, not only for maybe trying to get that 5 seed, because I don't know if they're going to catch the Yankees at this point, but they do have the Guardians nipping at their heels, which I'll get into in a minute, although I don't think that race, although the Guardians, I got to give it up, they played well here and they're hanging around, but I still think the Red Sox will prevail. And then they host the Rays to conclude their regular season. So Kansas City, Tampa twice, including today's game, which I believe is an afternoon game. Yes, it is. And then you have the Red Sox in between. So I think a relatively easy schedule. I'd be shocked if the Yankees surpass them and win the AL East. So, and of course, we know about the Centrals in both leagues. You can forget about it. And obviously, the NL East is already a wrap. So the division races, unless you're looking closely at Dodgers-Padres, the only other race that I can really look at is what's happening in the American League West, which I'll touch on in a minute, because I want to go back to the National League wild card, only because it involves my beloved Mets, who lost last night. Thank you, David Peterson, with the game tied at 2. He gave up a grand slam to Manny Machado. And Peterson is a guy, it's weird with him, because he is a veteran. He is a guy that is reliable, but when you think that David Peterson, in your gut, you're going to feel like, oh, he's pitching well and he's going up against a good team. I think he's going to have a good outing, and then does not. And then when you think that, oh, David Peterson's on the mound today. All right, let's see what we're going to get. I don't know if he's going to pitch a good game. And then he goes out and pitches a good game. And the worst part is that he'll pitch a good 6 innings and have 80-something pitches. Or the game in Baltimore in July where he had like 88 pitches through 7 innings, and they took him out, and the Mets ended up losing that game. So I get it that the manager, who certainly is going to make you scratch your head quite often than you'd like, but for Peterson to go back to him, when you think he's going to do well, he doesn't. And when you think, I don't know about this game, he pitches well. And last night, obviously, didn't do the job. So how I look at this Mets stretch here, and I'm just going to go from now to the weekend, because if you listen to the podcast last Thursday, I said, let's get to Monday after this homestand, which right now, I mean, when you think about it, the homestand has not been good. They are currently, 3-4. No, they're 3-3. Let me see. Let me make sure I got my math correct. No, they're actually 2-3 on this homestand, and the Met home record is actually very good when you talk about the top home teams in the sport. They're not the very top, but they're near the top. And when you look at what they've done here so far, they lost 2 out of 3 to the Rangers, who right now, they look like they're going to be toast as far as the division and wild card in the American League. But when they lose 2 out of 3, and then they split the first 2 games here, tonight is, I think, a very important game. Because as I said to you, even as early as Monday's podcast, they have to win these series. And even last Thursday. Yes, it'd be nice for them to go on a winning streak, but if they could somehow win this series, is that too much to ask? And then you go into the series against the Nationals over the weekend where they have to. If they lose 2 out of 3, then I'd really be dubious about them making the postseason. But if they don't win 2 out of 3, and more importantly, even sweep that series, because they finished their final 6 games on the road in Wrigley for 3, which I get it, the Cubs, they have the 4th seed locked. They can't win a division. They're not going to go anywhere south of 4, so they're going to host in that opening wildcard round, in all likelihood against the Padres, unless they somehow overtake the Dodgers to win a division. And then they close their season in Miami. And the Marlins, they are pesky, and they're always a thorn in the Mets' side. So these next 4 games to close out their regular season home schedule is imperative. 3 out of 4 at best. And I would like for them to run the table before they hit the road to the Windy City. Because if they think that the Diamondbacks, even the Reds, and I'll throw in the Giants as well, if they think that they're just all of a sudden going to punt the rest of this year, knowing that the Mets, I kind of hate to use this term, are a wounded animal right now, then you're sadly mistaken. Because how I look at this Met team at this very juncture, yes, it looked like they were going to snap out of it, especially after getting the walk-off win on Sunday. And then they had the explosion there in the early part of that game, first couple of innings, where you figure that, oh, wow, now the Mets, maybe they could get on a bit of a roll. Maybe they could get the first 2 games of the series so they don't have to worry about trying to win that 3rd game, where now, are you worried? No, but you want them to win the series today. You don't want them to lose here tonight if you're a Met fan, because then you win the series, you'll stabilize at least the 1.5 game lead that you currently have over the Diamondbacks, and then you have the Nationals coming in who have lost 4 in a row, and they played terribly here, but watch them come in here and try to do a number on them. So that we'll have to wait and see upon, but that's why I'm not going past Monday. So if you're a Met fan, you got to take 3 of the next 4. How you do it, doesn't matter. If you lose tonight, but then you sweep the Nationals, all right, fine. Win the night, you take 2 out of 3 against the Nationals, all right, fine. To me, anything less than that is a disaster. And I know that's extreme, but that's how I'm putting it at this stage, because I don't know if I can trust this Met team trying to close this out and get themselves into the postseason. So that's what you have. And then with the Diamondbacks, they played well here. They've beaten up on the Giants, and they're currently 2 in the loss, but 1.5. Well, me and my eyes. I need to get my glasses, people. 2 in the loss, 1.5 back. The Reds and Giants, both 2 back. And we'll take a look at the schedule as we'll peruse what the matchups are going to be for the weekend. I know the Giants are in LA for 4 starting tonight, so with the Dodgers, who salvaged their series against the Phillies as the Phillies pretty much beat up on them, and even with Ohtani throwing 5 no-hit innings in his start Tuesday night, but still wasn't enough for the Dodgers to carry them to victory. And I'd be worried about the Dodgers. I'll say that right now because their bullpen is tattered, torn, bruised, and battered. And for their offense, they have to kind of awaken themselves up from a slumber as well. But you would think, who knows, maybe once the bright lights of October come and maybe that button gets pushed, they'll be resuscitated and we'll have to wait and see whether or not the Dodgers are going to have legs. And I talked about this weeks ago, pretty much at the start of September, even maybe late August, where I said that the Dodgers, they're probably just waiting to get to October. And I understand it's dangerous to just flick the switch and think they can turn it on right away because the next thing you know, they'll be down 1-0 in the wild card series and then they have to win the next 2 and who knows what's going to happen there. And chances are they're going to play the Mets in that opening round if both the Mets survive and obviously the Dodgers do in the NL West where they'll have the 3 seed. Because right now they're not catching the Phillies or especially the Brewers as far as them getting a bye in the opening round of the National League playoffs. So when we look at the overall picture here of things with the Giants having to go to LA, hopefully the Dodgers can beat them up and put them out the pasture. And with the Diamondbacks, this coming weekend, they have the Phillies coming to town after a day off today. So maybe the Phillies could do the Mets and their fans, let me enunciate, them a favor by beating up on the Diamondbacks and maybe hopefully putting them out for a bit of an epitaph for 2025 as far as their season goes, which would be fantastic. And then the Reds, this weekend, I believe they're home. And might as well pull up the schedule now, come to think of it. The Reds today host the Cubs for a 4-game set. Now, again, the Cubs already have everything wrapped up, and I'm sure they're going to try to play well. That's not much of a rivalry, but of course, they are division rivals, so to speak. You know, it's not Chicago, St. Louis. It's not Milwaukee, Chicago. But the Reds, because they're at home, let's see what they're going to do here if they try to keep their playoff hopes alive by trying to beat a quality team. And I could go through the rest of the schedule. Obviously, come Monday, we'll see where the chips fall as far as the wild card. And obviously, we'll go through the schedules. It'll be just 6 games left for both leagues. And then in the American League, let's just turn our attention there before I go to the rest of the schedule because I concluded the National League. In the American League, it's as simple as this. Yankees right now, I would think that they're going to have the 4th seed locked up. They have a 2-game advantage on both the Mariners and Red Sox, who are both tied, 83 and 69. But I guess with the Mariners having the season series record in their favor, they have the 5 seed, where the Red Sox have the 6 seed. And I'll say this. If it's a situation where it's Mariners, Yankees, and Red Sox, Houston, I'd rather have it flipped around. I'd rather see Red Sox go into Yankee Stadium and either Seattle go to Houston or Houston go to Seattle. I think that would be better theater. Obviously, they're both playing against their division foes. If it's Yankees, Mariners, I've seen that movie before where the Yankees have beaten up the Mariners over the years in the postseason. And Houston, Boston, it would be good. And both series you would think would end up being good, but at the same time, it would be a lot more theater if the division rivals play one another. But then you have the Guardians, who are currently 2.5 and 2 in the loss behind the Red Sox and Mariners. So, and they've won 6 in a row. So who knows if that winning streak's going to have to continue. If you're the Guardians, I understand if you win series, that's going to help. But what's going to really catapult you into getting even closer is to continue this winning streak. And the Guardians, as we take a look at that schedule, they will conclude against the Tigers, who right now, for whatever the reason, and this is in Detroit, they played well. They've shut them out last night, and they won 7-5 there on Tuesday. And the Tigers, I know they've been hit or miss, so you got to wonder about them going into the postseason. Maybe they're looking forward to October, just getting ready to get themselves set for a divisional series since they'll have the bye. And also Tarek Skubal, which he'll pitch today, which is enormous because in his last start in Miami last Friday, he had to leave the game because of a lat issue. And based on what the imaging had said, that it was just a strain, nothing really alarming. Actually threw on Tuesday. He's going to pitch tonight, so that is a huge start. not only for him, but for the Tigers, because without Scooble, you can forget about it. There's no way they're going to go deep into October without him. And as it is, which would benefit the Tigers, knowing that they have the bye, they don't have to worry about it, to have him pitch in a wild card round. They could just automatically put him in game 1 of the division series, and if it goes 5 games, they could pitch him in game 5. But hopefully he's healthy, because without him, that is going to be an enormous blow to the Tigers. And who knows if they even get out of the division series alive without him in the lineup. So that start today against the Guardians is enormous. But as we also take a look at the schedule, because with the way things have shaped up here in the wild card, now you have they're playing a doubleheader. You have the Guardians after today's game, and it's an afternoon game in Detroit. They're going to Minnesota for 4. But here's the thing. They're playing a day-night doubleheader on Saturday, and the Twins, dead team walking. So if they somehow, some way come out today with a victory against Scooble, they go to Minnesota with a good shot to win 3 out of 4. And I understand, you want to continue this winning streak. But to me, if they win 4 of the next 5, so even if they lose today against Detroit, but sweep the sweep the Twins, or beat Detroit today and win 3 out of 4, they should come out on the other side looking pretty rosy, maybe a little bit closer in the wild card. But we'll have to wait and see, because then next week they play at home against Detroit and Texas. And Texas right now, forget about it. I'm not even going to include them at the moment. They're 4.5 back in the wild card, 5 in the division. So I don't think the Rangers are going to be a part of this mix here once we get past the weekend and into next week. So there you have it. Let's see how this is all going to shake down. And as we take a look at the schedule overall, what we have here, and I gave you the more important games. Today, obviously, Cleveland, Detroit, San Diego, New York. Yeah, I'm not going to go Toronto. At the Athletics, we'll conclude this series against the Red Sox this afternoon. Seattle at Kansas City, because you have a huge series there over the weekend, which I didn't touch on, which I'll get to in a second. Chicago, Cincinnati, Yankees and Baltimore. Is that a 4-game series? I guess that is. I thought that was a 3-game series, so my apologies there. And you have San Francisco, LA will start their series tonight, 1st of 4. Now, as far as starting tomorrow and into the weekend, here's what you have. Seattle at Houston, which that is going to be enormous. And I hope that Seattle, and I think right now, let me just double check this with the standings, because they are a half game behind. I hope Seattle wins today in Kansas City, because then they'll be even with their records. And then whomever wins 2 out of 3, they'll have a 1-game advantage heading into the week next week. And of course, we'll break down the schedule then as to who's going to have a favorable final 6 games and who may come out on top. So just a gargantuan series between those two teams. And it's in Houston. And the Astros, they just finished sweeping off the Rangers. Houston is weird. They're so up and down. And they lost Yordan Alvarez again, who I believe has an ankle sprain when he crossed home plate. Who knows what the status is going to be? I know the manager, Joe Espada, said that, hey, we don't want to put a timetable on it, but right now it looks like he could be out for some time. So who knows what Alvarez, and his season has not gone on track. As you know, he had the wrist injury, and he's just one of their big boppers, and we have not even seen him hit a lick due to his health. But that series is one that, to me, by far, is the biggest series of the weekend. And we can talk about some of the other series if you want, but that is the series, no doubt. Then you have Cleveland, Minnesota, as we talked about, 4-game series. Milwaukee, St. Louis. Now, Philly, Arizona, that's a big series too because of Arizona, where they're at in the wild card. San Francisco, LA, I know the rivalries we talked about, but still with the Giants 2 back. But that is it. Seattle and Houston is the series. And Seattle had that 10-game losing streak or winning streak snapped yesterday. So let's see if they get back in the win column, and that'd be great. I don't want them to be 1 game behind going into Houston, because then if Houston wins 2 out of 3, they'll be 2 games up, and you would think that they probably won't relinquish that lead. Now, if Seattle wins 2 out of 3, they'll be tied going into next week. That's why I want to see Seattle win today and then go into the weekend with the 3 games to see who wins 2 out of 3. Or you could get a sweep. Of course, I'm not going to rule that out, but chances are that I don't think that's going to happen. But whomever wins 2 out of 3, if Seattle wins today, will have a 1-game lead going into next week. And that's what I want to see as a baseball fan, just to bring more theater and bring more drama into the final week of the baseball season. And speaking of which, I'll bring this up now because I don't know if I'm going to talk about this on Monday or the following Monday. I will, because obviously the baseball season will end a week from this coming Monday. But my over-unders, I figured I'd touch on those. I haven't talked about those in a while. Now, I do have a couple of winners that are already in the book and one loser. And the others are I'm like hanging in the balance. And not that I gambled or bet on these people, so I don't want you to think that I've done so. But here are my over-unders. I had Detroit. That's a lock. Already win. 83.5 is an over. Milwaukee, 82.5 lock. They did that a couple of weeks ago. That was my win. My one loss so far, I did say the White Sox under 54.5, and I understand after last year, the only direction that they would go was up, and I've already lost that. What do the White Sox have won? 58 games? 57. And just to be official, Detroit has won 85, and the Brewers have the most wins in the sport, 93, and Philly has 91. Now, as far as the teams that are hanging in the balance, ready for this? I have the Nationals at 70.5, and they've been playing terrible. So, and they played a mess this weekend, so you think I'm going to root for them to win just for the silly over-under deal? Not in the least. And how I look at it is they have what? 9 games left, and they have to run the table, so that's going to be a loss. I might as well just chalk that up as an under. Now, here's the closer ones. Tampa, 80.5 is my under. So they have to lose 80. Or they have to win 80. Well, no, they have to lose 80. They have to lose 82, as you know. But right now, they are 74 and 78. I think I'm going to be fine with that. So they have to go 6 and 4 the rest of the way. So they can't go 7 and 3 in their final 10. So that could be close. I think that's going to be a win, but we'll see. And then the Angels, right now, and they're also in a tailspin, they're under a 72.5. So they've lost 6 in a row, and they need to lose 3 more games. They can't win 4. If they win 4, that's 73, that's an over. So if they are at 72, remember 72.5 is the number. So if they win 3 of their final, 9 or 10 games, because they do play today in Milwaukee, they could go 3 and 7 despite them losing 6 in a row. And what have they currently done here on this stretch? Let me just double check that. They are actually 3 and 7 right now. So we'll see, people. That is your over-unders. That is the MLB here in a big, giant nutshell. And I want to say congrats to Cal Raleigh. Now, I'm going to say this about Raleigh. He's a guy that has broken the most home runs by a switch hitter. Mickey Mantle did that, I believe, in his Triple Crown year in 56. And he currently has 56 home runs. He's on pace to hit 50. He's on pace to hit 60. And I have to say, I know going back to the month of June, I talked about how give the MVP award to Aaron Judge. But I have to say, your winner of the AL MVP should be Cal Raleigh. Raleigh should win that. And I'm not saying that to be an anti-Yankee or whatever. Judge, when he got hurt with the elbow there in the latter part of June and early August, obviously he's hit home runs. And yes, he's been productive, but he has not been on that torrid pace that he was for the first 3.5 months of the year. And he's cooled down considerably. And yes, he's still, to me, they're 1 and 2. And if Judge does win the MVP, I'm not going to say, there's an injustice. To me, at the end of the day, do I really care? No. But for the sake of the discussion, for Raleigh, who is a catcher, and the Mariners, who have played well here and could win a division, and even if they don't, they're going to be in the playoffs, I think he's the MVP of the league. I don't know what else to say. So let's see how he does, whether he gets to 60. I hope he does. Why not? Another player to get to 60 home runs. I don't think he's going to get Judge's AL record, or at least tie it, which he's 6 behind him. And with 11 games to go, with 10 games to go, because they got today and the final 9, I don't know if he's going to hit 6 home runs in 10 games. Is it impossible? No, but it is going to be a bit of a stretch, so we'll have to wait and see on that. But that is your baseball. All right, now let me turn my attention to the NFL as I put on the helmet and shoulder pads. And I know you have a lot of injuries this week. The biggest one being Joe Burrow, turf toe surgery, out for minimum. That's right, minimum 3 months. But hopefully he can recover fast and get back maybe week 16 throughout those final 3 weeks of the season, which will be right before Christmas, then the New Year's, or after the New Year's weekend. So that would be what, 16, 17, and 18? Maybe he comes back sooner. Maybe his rehab, he'll respond a lot quicker, faster, etc. So for the Bengals, who started off 2-0 for the first time in forever, and they have a game against Minnesota this week, which is not going to have their own quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, as he's going to be out the next 2 to 4 weeks. So Carson Wentz will take over there in Minnesota, where Jake Browning, who actually won the game there late against Jacksonville on Sunday, he's going to be under center here for the foreseeable future. But if you're a Bengal fan, to my guy Jai in Baltimore, who's the biggest and one of the biggest Bengal fans I know, because the biggest Bengal fans I know, Risa Saslow and Brian Murray, shout out to you three. But for Burrow, that is a big blow. Anytime you lose a starting quarterback of that ilk, it decimates the team. Obviously, it decimates even watching those games, because just when you sit on your sofa come Sunday, and for the diehard fan, you already know he's out. But let's just say for those who are like, hey, I want to see Joe Burrow. Oh, wait, he's out? He's not playing? Oh, geez. Puts a damper on things. Just like if Mahomes were to be out, just like if Josh Allen were to be out, just like if any of the top quarterbacks were to not play, Lamar Jackson, etc., that is just a death knell to the sport, because especially with fantasy football, for those who indulge, or gambling, hopefully you don't, but obviously it's going to be generated and surrounding the quarterback as far as their health and their peak level of play, that once they're out, it ruins it. I mean, there's no other way to slice it, dice it, you call it. So that's what we got there with Burrow. But the other injuries of note, besides McCarthy, and he had a terrible game there on Monday night against Atlanta, if you saw there. And Penix didn't play well either, but Atlanta obviously did a number on the Vikings. So with McCarthy out with that high ankle sprain, and then you have Aaron Jones, who may be out, and it looks like he's not going to play against the Bengals too. So those are two key components of the Viking offense that are going to be out. Jaden Daniels has this knee injury, sprained, on top of the other losses that they had. Austin Eckler blew out his Achilles. Dietrich Wise with a torn left quad, he's done. They signed Preston Smith for backup with Wise out. And with Jaden Daniels, it's probably not going to be severe to the point where he's going to sit out. But again, Jaden Daniels not playing for the Commanders, it is going to be, who's going to want to watch Commander football if you're not in the DC area? That's why these quarterbacks, they get the royal treatment with the roughing the quarterbacks, and some of them obviously are very questionable, but the late hits and things of that nature, they need to keep the quarterbacks in these games. That's all there is to it. Jalen Johnson, top corner there, the Bears, he's out with a groin injury indefinitely. So with the Bears 0-2, and to miss a key component of the secondary, that's enormous. And then even the coaches are getting hurt. Sean McVay has a plantar fascia deal, which obviously he doesn't play, but he's going to be on the sidelines. Who knows if he's going to be hobbling around or whatever, but you know he's not going to miss a game. But even coaches are getting injured here along the way. And then the Cowboys signed Davian Clowney for reassurance of that pass rush with Micah Parsons in Green Bay. I don't know what Clowney's going to give you. And let's face it, for a guy that was picked number 1 overall out of South Carolina, 2012, whenever that was, or 2013, he's had his moments, but he's been a major disappointment. I mean, he's had injuries, he's been in and out, his motor you have to question. And that's not to say he's not a disruptive force when he's geared up and ready to play. But he's bounced around a million teams, obviously drafted by the Texans, played in Baltimore, Carolina, he's been all over the place. So I believe the Panthers off the top of my head. Make sure I get that correctly. But Clowney's on the Cowboys, so let's see what he does. As the Cowboys are in Chicago this week, and that is your 425 game, which I don't like, because let's face it, the game of the weekend. You can talk about the Monday night game, Detroit at Baltimore, which is fantastic, but it's going to bring you visions of the game 2 years ago in Baltimore. I believe it was about week 6, week 7, where Baltimore hosted the Lions, and what happened in that game? They took them to the back of the woodshed. 38-6, ran all up and down the field on the Lion defense. So, to me, although it's a new year, different set of circumstances, I get it. And that's a pivotal game, although it's AFC versus NFC, but one of those teams are going to be 1-2. And if you ask me, I think it's going to be the Lions, because we all know the Ravens play well at home. And even though they can have a hiccup along the way, and I hope they prove me wrong, I want to see the Lions win. There's no way, shape, or form do I even want to think that the Ravens are going to win this game. And yes, Clowney was on the team last year, the Panthers, that is. But yeah, it was Cleveland, Tennessee, Seattle. I mean, the guy's been all over the place, and now with the Cowboys. So that's what you have there with the Cowboys and Clowney. But even though Detroit, Baltimore, you got to wait till Monday night. The Sunday night game, I do not like Kansas City and the Giants. I know everybody's talking about, Kansas City, because they go 0-3. Giants, with their offense and what we saw there with Russell Wilson, blah, blah, blah. To me, that's an awful game. I'm not even buying in on whatever hype they're going to surround that contest. And I'm sure Taylor Swift, if you remember 2 years ago, went to the Chiefs-Jet game. That was the season where Aaron Rodgers blew out his Achilles, and they had to post that on a Sunday night, where you saw her with Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, all in the luxury suite. Does she make another appearance? I would think she does. Why not? It's New York, New Jersey. You may see the same cast of characters in the building. You may even see Ice Spice was from the Bronx. So who knows? So to me, I could care less, as you all know. But that may be the big hullabaloo of what could happen there Sunday night. But the game of the day, by far, in the NFL, is Rams at Eagles. 1 o'clock, that should be a 4:25 game. I know Dallas, Chicago, because of the Chicago, you want to bring them onto the schedule early season, because if that game was week 13, 14, maybe even week 12, they would have punted that game, even with the Cowboys there. As we all know, they're a ratings magnet. But with the Rams and Eagles, remember, the last time these two teams played was in the divisional playoff last year, where the Rams were knocking on the door. They were, I don't think they were first and goal, but they were first and 10 at the Eagle 11 or 12. And they may even have been first and goal. And if it wasn't for, and they actually had a 2nd and 1. Maybe it was first. They were definitely in the red, and they probably got to a 2nd and 1, if I'm not mistaken. And then that's when they blitzed up the middle and they sacked Matthew Stafford, and I believe it was a loss of 8, so it was a 3rd and 9, and they had an incomplete, and I believe it was a 4th and 9 as well, and it was in the snow, and he threw the ball out of bounds there on the right sideline, and the Rams were unable to seal the deal, which would have propelled them to the NFC Championship game. But because of that, the Rams did not win, and a lot of people could think, I understand, when you're west coming east, in essence, that's a 10 o'clock game. And I don't know if the Rams are going to take a page out of what the Seahawks did this past weekend, where they left on Friday to go to Pittsburgh, spend an extra day in the Steel City, and we saw what happened. Sam Darnold threw the ball over the lot, although the 2 interceptions, but they left Pittsburgh with a win, 31-17, and you want to attribute that to the extra day where you didn't fly in early afternoon, cross-country, where they had to prepare, do the walkthrough, etc., and then wake up extra early the next day. Their clocks 3 hours behind, considering the time zones and the change. So I'd be interested to know whether or not the Rams are going to leave tomorrow as opposed to Saturday. And I'm sure word probably got out that the Seahawks did leave an extra day earlier, to maybe McVay's probably thinking the same thing. Knowing that this is an enormous game in the NFC. This could be for seeding when it's all said and done. Whether that's a 1 seed, I don't know if the Rams are going to get up that high in the conference, but if it just so happens that the Eagles, let's say, are 14-3, or maybe 13-4, do the Rams have that type of capability to get that record when it's all said and done? I think they'll be a touch below, but stranger things have happened. So if they both end up tied and the Rams win this game on Sunday, guess who has the advantage to get seeding? You would think, whether it's the Eagles winning the division, which I think it's going to be a cakewalk, or the Rams, although the Arizona Cardinals and the San Francisco 49ers will have a thing or two to say about that, because they're both 2-0. And oh, by the way, they play in the Bay Area or south of that this weekend, which is a low-key, that's a 3.5-star game. Maybe if you want to be generous, I'll say a 4-star game. But we all know Rams-Eagles is 5-star must-watch, 1 o'clock there Sunday at Lincoln Financial. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that game. I think that by far is the best game on the lot. The game tonight, Miami at Buffalo, thankfully it's not going to be 20 degrees, because then the Dolphins would absolutely have no shot. But with the way that the Bills have come out this year, you would think that they're just going to run roughshod over that Dolphin defense. So I don't expect a big-time performance there by the Dolphins tonight. Who knows? Maybe they'll know that their coach is on the plank and he's getting toward the end, and maybe there'll be some desperation. Maybe they'll come out firing. Who knows? To the point where maybe the game is competitive early third quarter. But I would think that the Bills will pull away and end up winning comfortably as far as tonight's Thursday night matchup. And one more time, the Thursday night matchups, you always look forward to because it's like, oh, it's an NFL game to watch. But the games are never, if ever, rarely any good. All you got to do is just look back in the history. And I'm not trying to say they all have to be classics. And I'm not trying to say that they all have to be nail biters or down to the wire or competitive deep into the fourth quarter. No, but can we see a game of semblance where, oh, wow, Dolphins are up 17-13 and there's 4 minutes to go in the third quarter? Can we see that? We rarely see that. So hopefully we'll get a somewhat competitive game tonight. But if you ask me, I don't think that's going to be the case. But as far as the rest of the schedule goes, and again, it is a snoozer. You have Pittsburgh, they're playing at New England. That's all you need to know. That's certainly a good barometer of what lies ahead. Green Bay at Cleveland, Indy at Tennessee, Cincinnati, Minnesota, remember, no quarterbacks. Jets at Tampa. Tampa's 2-0. I didn't talk about them Monday night as they showed guts in winning that game in Houston. So, and of course, I didn't also mention about the Chargers winning and Justin Herbert, another great game for him. You got to wonder whether or not he's starting to figure things out against two good opponents. I understand one in Sao Paulo and the other one on the road too, so keep that in mind. And the Charger game is also pretty good too at 4 o'clock. But Jets at Tampa, Vegas at Washington, Atlanta at Carolina, Houston at Jacksonville, Denver at LA. That's a good game. But Denver's not 2-0. It's 1-1 versus 2-0. New Orleans at Seattle, Arizona, San Francisco. That's a good game. Someone's going to go 3-0. Dallas, Chicago, and then, of course, we talked about Sunday night and then Monday night. And I'm not going to forget this week, so I will say this, and I know there's a bit of a risk. I'm going back on the risk factor here because I didn't post this. I didn't say this on the podcast last week, which I should every Thursday. And I had a video ready to post last Sunday, but I didn't post it. When I did my live stream, of course, people are going to say, oh, right, yeah, of course you're going to say that now, JAYREELZ. But I swear I did pick the Ravens because I wanted to go to safe route. They were playing Cleveland. I figured, what the hell. So you know what? This time I'm going to put a little bit of a risky pick and gamble because you want to save the big teams for later on in the year when they beat up on the dregs or the so-called dregs of the league. That's why I went to safe bet with Baltimore. But my knockout pick this week, and yes, I could say Green Bay, but no, you never know. Watch Cleveland show up. Or I could say Tampa because they're playing the Jets, but you never know. The Jets, watch them show up. I'm rolling the dice, and I'm going to pick Seattle. They're going to host New Orleans. A lot of people think New Orleans is a bad team, although they've been competitive. But this is New Orleans' first game on the road because remember, they lost to Arizona and San Francisco their first 2 games at home. They got to fly all the way to the Pacific Northwest. Seattle, I'm sure they're going to be pumped up, ready to go after losing their opener to Seattle in their building, but then beating Pittsburgh, and then they have some home cooking. So I'm going to pick Seattle as my knockout pick here in week 3. And as far as the college football goes, here's what you have with the schedule. Not a bad schedule, not great either. I will say Texas Tech and Utah. Now, that is weird because the game is on Fox at high noon. And Utah, aren't they I guess they're in the Mountain Time Zone. I should know this. Is Utah in the Mountain Time Zone? So that is a 10 o'clock local time game. They are Mountain Time. Yeah, I should have known that. That game's going to start at 10 a.m.? Seriously? And listen, I'm not the one who makes up the schedule. So for Texas Tech to play at Utah bright and early with your breakfast, that may be a bit of a stretch. So I wonder if that's going to help Texas Tech just a little bit. Maybe not. I understand they play a time zone east, but that is your first game because those 2 teams are ranked. Texas Tech 17th, Utah 15th, or 16th, excuse me. But then the rest of your schedule, your 3:30 game is Michigan at Nebraska. That's a decent game. And let's see in Michigan. Remember they lost to Oklahoma a couple weeks ago. Nebraska, we'll see how that unfolds. Notre Dame, which they're still ranked, by the way. I don't know how. They've lost 2 games already. And obviously they lost the game the other day there to Texas A&M. You could argue whether or not they should be out of the top 25, but they are 24th. They're playing Purdue, which they should beat up on them. But the other big game of note that you have, to me, Illinois, Indiana. I understand they're both ranked, but that is not a sexy game. I'm sorry. I'd rather watch Florida, Miami at the same time. Indiana, Illinois is on NBC and Peacock, where Florida and Miami, that is on ABC. And I understand Florida right now, they have their tail between their legs and Miami's flying high. But because it's an in-state rival game, and who knows, that could get ugly quick, fast, in a hurry. If the game was in the Swamp, maybe it'd be a little bit different. But remember, last year Miami went up to the Swamp week 1 and they destroyed them. So I don't know about this game here, but I would think Miami will take care of business. They're down in the Hard Rock Cafe Garden in Miami Gardens. And that is it. Those are the only really big games of note. But you could have upsets along the way. We'll have to wait and see. As you saw Clemson last week, which was a faux pas on my part. And, I didn't talk about Clemson. I screwed up royally with the Texas A&M Notre Dame where they kicked I thought they kicked the extra point. That is a terrible job on my part. I understand they had a 2-point conversion failed because of a botched snap. My homework was backwards. People, I can't watch every one of these college football games throughout the course of a day. So when I read the box score, usually I watch the highlight first and then look at the box score. But I saw the box score first. I didn't go refer to the highlight. I just thought that, what is Marcus Freeman doing? He's going for 2 here, but it's because of the botched snap, and they're not going to kick an extra point at that point. They had to go for 2. So therefore, that was a terrible job on my part. Full transparency and ownership of that. So I got to be better. Even if I'm not watching these games, I got to go to the highlights first, then go to the box score to reflect, and then get a better feel and idea for the outcome of the game. That's what you have in college football. Now, as I turn my attention, a couple of quick news and notes. I'll go to the hardwood and talk what's happening with the NBA, or WNBA, excuse me. Nothing's going on in the NBA. I'm not going to get into the Kawhi Leonard mess. I will not do that. But here's what you have as far as the schedule goes. Terrible loss by the Liberty last night. They had a shot to close them out. And I know Breanna Stewart is compromised here because she has that knee issue. And for her, you would think, from here on out, for the remainder of this postseason, she's going to have an issue. Now, they're going to have to play a Game 3 in Phoenix, which I believe is on Sunday. Let me just make sure of that. And Stewart last night, 20 minutes, 6 points. Certainly not a factor in the game. But the Mercury had a big second quarter, and obviously put the game away there in the third quarter as they won 86-60. So now let's see if the Liberty, remember they're the defending champs, let's see what they're going to have left in the tank to try to win this series and advance there on Sunday. So we'll have to take a look at that. But the other series of note, Minnesota beat up on Golden State last night. So Minnesota advances, no surprise there, because you would figure that the Lynx are the best record in the sport. A lot of people think they're going to win the championship this year, so you have them advancing. Tonight you have Indiana, Atlanta, Seattle at Vegas. So those two teams will play against one another to see who's going to advance. That's actually Game 3 tonight. Yeah, because they did split. My apologies there. Terrible on my part. Game 3 tonight. So we'll see if Indiana can pull off an upset in Atlanta. Still, Caitlin Clark's going to be done, so you're not going to see her back. And Seattle did show some gumption as they snapped the Aces winning streak. They had won 17 games regular season and then game 1 there on Sunday. So their series will wrap up tonight in Vegas, where tomorrow you're going to have, I thought it was going to be Saturday, or Sunday's when the second round starts. I thought that game was going to be played later in the weekend, but Game 3 tomorrow in Phoenix, New York. Let's see if they can seal the deal. Those games are on ESPN2. And then Game 1 of the semis will begin 3 o'clock ABC and 5 o'clock. Now, I don't know. I'd have to look at the bracket to see who will play in the next round. So let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Yeah, they don't have a bracket here. And again, I'm not all up on the WNBA to see who's going to be next. I'm sure they probably do it by seeding. So if the Mercury win as a 5 seed, will they play Minnesota? And if the Fever win, I don't know if they reseed. That I can't tell you. And I know people say, JAYREELZ, come on, how come you're not on top of this? Listen, I'm not on top of WNBA basketball. As you know, if you listened a few weeks ago and if you watched my vlog on the channel, of course, at JAYREELZ on YouTube, I had stated right at the All-Star break that I would get into more of the WNBA. And I have, but not to the extent where I know the playoff permutations after the opening round. So we'll see what happens there tonight and tomorrow with Indiana, Atlanta, Seattle, Las Vegas, and of course New York and Phoenix as they wrap up their opening round series. And then with the NHL, I know that training camp is open with, I'm just looking at this here. David Pastrnak out, tendonitis. That's not a good thing. The Predator captain, Roman Josi, is healthy, which is a good thing for them. And Mika Zibanejad is going to be at wing for a pairing with JT Miller, who's been assigned the captain of the Rangers, as I lace up my skates. Really the only thing of note here with the NHL, twofold. One is, no surprise, Matthew Tkachuk is going to be out until December with that surgery he had on the sports hernia and the torn adductor muscle. Why he didn't get it done at the end of the Stanley Cup Finals beyond me, because if he would have gotten it done, let's say even a week after the Cup Final, he probably could have returned as early as November. But now you got to wait an extra month. And I understand this is for the big picture, the long term, when you look at what the Panthers are trying to do. Obviously, they've won back-to-back Cups. They played in the last 3 Stanley Cup Finals. And I would think with the re-signing of the likes of Aaron Ekblad and guys like Brad Marchand, and they also signed another player to a long-term deal. Off the top of my head, I'm not in hockey mode, full hockey mode, but they re-signed 3 of their own players to their team, where they're going to do anything and everything to get a push for that 3rd straight Stanley Cup, which has not happened. Think about this, people. You haven't had 3 straight Stanley Cup victories or wins since 1983. And to have the Panthers to be put in that pantheon with the New York Islanders. The Penguins didn't do that. The Edmonton Oilers of Wayne Gretzky didn't do that. The Detroit Red Wings haven't done that. So this would be lofty company if they are able to win that 3rd. And then I will officially name them a dynasty. Because to go to 4 straight cups and then to win the back 3, you're a dynasty. But for Tkachuk, as I mentioned, should have had that surgery done long time ago. Didn't happen. So now he's not going to be back until December. And then a sad note, you had Eddie Giacomin, the Ranger goalie, very popular during his days when he was with the Rangers in the 60s, and then was let go there before the 75-76 season, and then came back 2 days later as a member of the Red Wings to a very tearful return, where a lot of the Ranger fans were even rooting for Giacomin to win the game because of how things ended up there with the Rangers. But Eddie Giacomin, who was a very good goalie, in the Hall of Fame, not an all-time great, but one who obviously had a very good career and certainly a favorite among the Ranger faithful dating back to the late 60s and to the early 70s, passes away at the age of 86. I don't know the extent of his death or the details of how he passed, but thoughts, prayers, condolences go out to the Giacomin family, to the Rangers, Red Wings, NHL on his passing. Very sad news there. But on top of all that, that is it, people. That is what I got. That is the latest and greatest. And as always, thank you so much for stopping by, carving out precious time out of your day to listen to what it is I have to say about what goes on in the wonderful toy department of life, otherwise known as sports. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe, rate, review, throw me a few stars, write me a review on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, you can watch the video version of this podcast on Spotify. And one more time, on the YouTube channel, at JAYREELZ. I would sincerely and gratefully appreciate that. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. I'm at 705 currently. This is the little engine that could. Trying to keep on churning on that local track, trying to get to the express track to 1,000 and beyond, people. So if you could play your part, share with your family, friends, foes, frenemies, take a screenshot, share it to them on social media, tag me on it, And you could do so at the following: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the JAYREELZ Podcast, or on Instagram, JAYREELZ. Twitter, JAYREELZ with the one, just the number one at the end of it. And if you want to hit me up with a question, comment, or suggestion, you could do it by sending any inquiries to the JAYREELZ Podcast at gmail.com or the aforementioned social media accounts. I'll be more than happy to follow up with you guys and gals, because whether you do or do not know, this is what I love to do, people. I've been doing this now 19 months full time. And there hasn't been a day or even a second that I've said to myself, oh man, I got to do this again. Oh, I got to post a video. Oh, I got my podcast. Oh, I'm not prepared. Nonsense. You know what they say? When you do what you love, it's not really work. And it certainly hasn't felt like that. But in the process, this is why I need for you guys and gals to subscribe. I got to generate income. And I've been doing my hustling on the side as far as trying to get sponsors, as far as trying to get partnerships. And please, for those out there, I'm your guy. So, as I mentioned, if you could play your part to share with all those who love sports, like sports, the casual, the diehard sports fan, or even someone who just likes content, even some lifestyle content, which I have on the channel, please, I implore you to do so. Because like I said, in the blood, in the DNA, talking sports is birth. And as long as I sit in front of this camera and microphone, I promise you, I will deliver nothing but passion, fire, energy, fury with my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything that happens on the world of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. From my lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are, the JAYREELZ Podcast always comes correct, direct, and in full effect. From the South Bronx, the South Beach, the South Central, the South Pacific, and all points beyond. Peace, love, and God bless everybody. And until next time on the JAYREELZ Podcast, on the flip, baby.